Printing money is bad,
Hmm.
right? It's inflationary.
Hmm.
But borrowing printed money is insane. And I think all of that revolves around the debt ceiling increase. But I suggest that these investors are looking at, oh, great, America's not going to default, and ignoring the fact that we've just given the Congress unlimited license to increase the money supply.
And then the president is talking about
Why do we need a debt
why do
ceiling?
we need a debt ceiling?
Yeah, what's the point of it?
What's the point?
Because
And he
it
does
was,
have a point.
well, it was intended to replace the checks and balances in the Constitution of no state shall make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debt. So way back in the teens, after the Federal Reserve was given the power to create money through its monopoly influence over the dollar, there were those in Congress who recognized very quickly what that meant. What that means is that these guys are going to be free to inflate the money supply. And we need in the main engine of inflation, because remember, what was the only thing that the Federal Reserve was authorized to expand the money supply on, and that was Treasury debt.
But, early on, before the Monetary
Way
Decontrol
before,
Act.
right, Monetary
1981,
Decontrol
right?
Act of 1980. Yes.
See, you taught me. Okay.
No, you got it.
Okay.
So in all those days, in 1914, 15, 16, 17, the only thing that the Federal Reserve could monetize or turn into money would be a debt instrument from the Treasury of the United States.
Isn't
And
that
that was
amazing?
one of
Yeah.
emergency measures. Oh, God forbid, what if a hurricane hits Texas and we need a bunch of money? And so Congress issues a bond. I owe you $50 billion.
Let's send it
And
to
nobody
Texas.
wants it.
Yeah.
Well, then the Federal Reserve is authorized to print the notes and buy it. And so with that in place, those in Congress realized, wait a minute, if the Federal Reserve decides they want to help Britain win World War I, they'll mobilize our credit, print money, and send it off. So we need to limit them because the only thing that they can monetize is Treasury bond. Let's limit the supplies of Treasury bonds. And how do we do that? Well, with a debt ceiling. Remember, the check and balance put into the Constitution was that all bills for taxation had to originate in the House. So if these guys in the House, who are elected every 2 years, suddenly decided they needed to double your taxes or triple your taxes because, they couldn't borrow money, well, then they would get voted out of office in a couple years. So the Federal Reserve conveniently provided them cover and allowed them to tax a little bit and borrow a little bit. And, those who understood the nature of this beast wisely pushed for a debt ceiling and got it.
And so with the Monetary Decontrol Act and then the Fed being able to monetize whatever they want, credit default swaps, mortgages,
Anything.
credit cards,
Student loans.
they can monetize anything.
I owe you. Remember what I used to say? You take out a paper bag, right?
That's right.
I owe you $1 billion on a paper bag, date it, sign it, hand it to me. Now I have a debt instrument that's eligible for discount, just the way Marcus Goldman did. If we were in 1869, Marcus would take that paper bag, fold it up, and put it in his hat and give me 90% of whatever it said on the face.
Central banks
Took over that function.
in 2017 created $2 trillion in stuff. I mean,
In a period when they were stopping. But
Yeah.
remember here,
$2 trillion.
what the Fed does, right, again, is they monetize existing debt. They had just about done all that they could do. They needed fresh supply. And this is what I want folks to understand, that now that the Treasury is willing to provide fresh supply, then there's no question that the money supply has just increased. Remember that 200 economists gathered in South America couldn't agree on what money was. We had separate measures, M1, M2, M3, and L. All of that's turned on its head now, obviously, as 90% of our money is electronic. But one thing, just like the mintage of coins, if you go back to the root and say, well, what can increase the money supply? And the answer is any recognized debt instrument. And if you show up at your local commercial bank with a Treasury bond, a legitimate, authentic Treasury bond, and you say to that bank, I want to borrow money against this Treasury bond, that is good collateral, period.
Yeah.
It's no question. The Fed itself will lend nearly 100% on the face value of that Treasury bond. So it's as good as money. And although the economists couldn't agree that it was money, in my mind, there's no doubt that's the root money, debt of the United States.